scrambling. Hi everyone. We're really excited to have you guys here at our last Faith and Enterprise of the semester. Tonight's topic is business realities in a post-COVID world. We have an excellent presentation by three of our panelists tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce them, give you guys some housekeeping stuff to remember throughout the night, and then I'll just close in a word of prayer. So our first panelist and presenter is Nathan Freeman, who is the Principal Project Manager with the City of Riverside. And then we have Sherry Shimshook, who is a Senior Project Manager with the City of Riverside. And then lastly, we have Jerry Tessier, who is the President of Arteco Partners, the owner and developer of the Riverside Food Lab and Game Lab. So if you guys would just bow your heads, I'll go ahead and pray and then we'll get started. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for our guest speakers and the knowledge that they bring to each of our students tonight. I pray just a blessing over their presentation and over tonight as we just spend some time together in fellowship. And I just thank you so much for just the Robert K. Job School of Business, and I just pray over the rest of the night. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay. And then I will go ahead and have our presenters come on up.
Hi, good evening. It's really great to be here, and we really appreciate CBU for inviting us to speak. I'm Sherry Shimshook, Senior Project Manager for Economic Development for the city, and these are my colleagues, Nathan Freeman, who is the Principal Project Manager for the city, and Jerry Tessier, who is not only a developer and a builder in Riverside, but he's a Riverside champion as well. I am really pleased to be here to talk a little bit today about economic development and, yes, the post-COVID world. I'm going to begin with some sort of basics on economic development and what it's all about. But first, now that you know me, I'd like to get to know all of you just with a hand raise, just to kind of know who my audience is here. And if you can't hear me, go like this and I will speak a little louder. First of all, could you please, by a show of hands, let me know if your major at the university is somehow directly related to economics, economic development, or business, or business communications. If you are in a major that you feel like this is directly related, you just give me a hand up. Cool. Okay, all right, a good number of you. Great. So for the rest of you, you're going to find out that it actually is related to whatever it is you're going to do with your life, whatever great things lay ahead for you. So, second question is, how many of you are from Riverside? Okay. And how many of you are from that great eastern part of Southern California known as the Inland Empire, somewhere in the IE? Cool. Okay, so we have some diversity here, and for those of you who are not from either area, I think you're still going to find this pretty interesting. This is something that I'm passionate about, and I think that you'll notice that through all of our presentations. That we have a great deal of passion for the work that we do. Economic development, what is it? Let's go first, what is it? So, the World Bank says that economic development is the coming together of professionals like myself and Nathan in the public sector, private sector individuals who are investors, developers, or business owners, and nonprofit organizations working together to create the environment that achieves prosperity, economic prosperity for a community. And that's a really great, it's a really great definition. It works, it pretty much explains it. But it does leave out one thing that I find very important, and economic development is also public service. It is especially if you're in the public sector, economic development is public service. It has an effect on every aspect of life in a community. And that's why when we do it right, when we do it with thought, we make a difference. And I know that that's something that's very important. If you're a student here, you know how important it is to feel that your work and your life has purpose and meaning because you were put here to do that. So, let's talk about what it is and how it functions really quickly. And I want to tell you up front, I'm going to be the one giving you like that bit of foundation. All the cool stuff is coming from them. So I'm going to set you up with a little bit of a foundation and let them tell you the cool things that come out of economic development and where we're going, especially in this post-COVID world. So I love this slide. I'm kind of a nerd about this slide because it says so much and it's really much simpler than you think. In the middle are successful businesses, the golden area. That's the businesses that create taxes, they create income, they create employment opportunities, and they also support the social fabric of a community. And what is social fabric? I'll get right back to that. Second of all anyway, over here in the blue-black color are the economic developers. That's me, that's Nathan. That's so many people across the city in one way or another that are serving the public through economic development. Our job is to bring the skill set that we have to bear in creating an environment that is economically viable and successful and prosperous. We provide resources, we help overcome barriers, and we provide support through partnerships as well. So that's what we do to get to the successful business goal in the middle. But in the end, and this is why it really has a heartfelt for me and it's community service, in the end, it's all about the community. It is all about the things that we all want in this world. We want quality places to live and to work. If you want to help the homeless, support your local businesses. If you want beautiful parks for children to play in, for you to have a picnic in, support your local businesses. If you want clean streets, well-paved roads, you get the idea, support your local businesses. Because that's what it's about. That is what it's about. And that social fabric that I talked about, that is the connection between the business community and the people that they serve. That is that place where you're creating a sense of community, a sense of culture in your community. It's when you have your favorite stores, your favorite little restaurant, the place you like to go hiking, the park, you name it. Where's your favorite entertainment spot? And it's in your own community. That's the social fabric that connects people and businesses together. So I'm going to give you a couple of little facts about Riverside and then I'm going to click along. And if you're paying attention, there could be a quiz at the end. So just letting you know. Riverside was founded in 1870. It is the 12th largest city in the state. It is, and as of the 2020 census, and I have to read it, sorry, I don't have the number memorized yet. We have 314,999 people in Riverside. It's a pretty good sized city, and if any of you know someone who's recently had a baby here, then there's, well, 314,999. So, Riverside's first industry, it was considered to be the birthplace of the citrus industry when Riverside came to be in 1870 and beyond. So that's where Riverside kind of got its start. Let's see. So, the core functions of economic development. And this doesn't change pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. The way you implement these core functions changes. But the actual functions themselves, or the core, does not. Because a successful business community needs all of these things. First of all, business development. And that is business attraction, business retention, and the development and support for entrepreneurship and business startups. All three of those things together make up your business development. Each of those has its place, and during COVID it looked very different than it does today. And pre-COVID it had a completely different complexion as well. Talent development, again, developing, growing your own talent, all of you. You are the talent that's growing here. You are the ones we want to keep here. When you come out of the university with your education, we want there to be jobs for you here. If not directly in Riverside, because remember, we are part of a greater region, the Inland Empire, but we want you to be here. We don't want you on the freeway for 4 hours every day trying to get to some job. So growing your own is extremely important. That means supporting, from an economic development standpoint, that means supporting internships, getting businesses connected that will be interested in doing internships, doing apprenticeships. That means supporting the local universities, working with them in capacities like this and many others. It also means supporting the non-help them when they're struggling, figure out how to get to that next step and get out of difficulty. All of those things are part of the business and talent development. Investment climate is another core function of economic development. Having a welcoming investment climate is key to getting businesses to come here, to having Jerry here, bringing some of the coolest stuff that you're going to learn about pretty soon. All has to do with a welcoming investment climate. And how do we do that? We do that by breaking down barriers. We do that by looking at programs and services that make it easy for businesses to come here and do business. Here's a really good example of one in Riverside. Maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6, if you came to Riverside to build a building, or you came to Riverside to open your business, you had to go to this floor, and this floor, and this floor, and that floor, and down the street, and come back, and go here, and it's all on paper, and you drag yourself back and forth and fill out a paper, and oh great, they didn't tell me I needed this, I gotta go back over here. And that's how it worked. And it was very time consuming. A few years ago, we developed, over time, the one-stop shop. The one-stop shop is now everything's in one spot. You come into the 3rd floor of City Hall. Here's planning, building, fire, water, electric. Over here you can get your business license and you never left the floor. And you didn't have to fill out a bunch of paper because almost all of it is now online. Almost all of it is electronic. If you have to submit plans, you submit plans electronically. If you need to have a meeting, what we call a pre-development meeting, in order to sit down with people and understand the process, we walk you through it. We schedule a meeting, people come and sit around the table and say, hey, you better think about this. This is the form you're going to want. This is how you're going to, and help walk you through it. That is a positive investment climate. So that's a pretty good example of that one. Finally, marketing and storytelling. Basically, if you're not telling your story, someone else is telling it for you. Marketing and storytelling is a huge part of the success of economic prosperity in your community. So we tell the story, and we use everything at our disposal: social media, newsletters, more traditional methods such as magazines. We give presentations and speeches and talk to people. Nathan and I actually have another presentation coming up later this month with a group of brokers from Orange County and LA County to tell them what's happening out here, because it's surprising when they don't know. But we aren't even the best. We are not the top speakers. We're not the top storytellers. The top storytellers are the people who do business in this city, and they tell their story of what happened when they did business in Riverside. The people who do what Jerry's done, who built things here, and they tell you why. Why do I want to invest here? And they are the best storytellers of all, because it's so genuine. It's so authentic. So I know I don't have to have anybody raise their hand to say what was the #1 factor influencing the economy for the last 2 years around the world. COVID-19. And I'll tell you a little bit about what happened from a city, from a government side, a little bit when it happened, and what we've done, and what we see ahead. And I'll give you just a glimpse of what we see ahead, because I'll be honest, the water is still not clear. You know, the tea leaves haven't settled. So There's a lot we don't know yet. When COVID hit, the first thing was, how do we help our businesses survive? How do we help them get through this time? We couldn't communicate with them face to face. They were being shut down right and left. So we had to immediately, City of Riverside was actually the first city to set up a COVID-19 recovery team who focused only on COVID-19 and recovery. And what we did was work out every possible way of communicating. We learned to communicate virtually. We got social media down to a brand new level of art. We did every communication pattern that we could find. And what did we need to communicate? Because there was so much they didn't know. There was so much we all didn't know. It was research. It was finding out what was happening at the state level. What were the laws? Because they seemed to be changing. Am I allowed to be open? Am I not allowed to be open? What am I going to do if I can't do this or that? How do I pivot? If I can't do this, what can I do? So we communicated, we provided resources in multiple ways, and we also created toolkits to help businesses. All of you, you're familiar now with the little feet on the floor in half of the retailers and restaurants for social distancing, etc. We provided that kind of thing to the business community. So that's part of what we did to support them. And we were very fortunate to be able to get CARES Act money. That money came to the feds, to the state, and then down to us. And we were able to provide that money to businesses, small businesses. Riverside is almost 70% small businesses based on the SBA's identification of what a small business is. So we are highly small, localized businesses, and they were suffering. And we made many phone calls. The entire team spent days like a call center talking to them, finding out what was happening. So when we got this money, we put it out there for the business community, and we were able to get out $5.4 million into hands of small and micro businesses that, through no fault of their own, were really struggling. We're really proud of that, because that was one of the stories that we heard over the phone, the stress and the frustration and the families who were affected. And I'm sure most of you probably know someone who, either in your family or a friend's family, who either lost their job or were temporarily lost their job. Maybe they couldn't pay a bill. Maybe they got behind on their rent. All of those things were just so overwhelming for especially the small businesses, because they're your neighbors. They live here too. So the CARES Act grant was really helpful, but all of those pieces, the resources, the communication, that's still economic development. We just had to turn the dial and do it differently. During the recovery phase, all those things still matter, and yet again, just a little differently. Now it's really about business recovery support. We've provided grant funding to the Small Business Development Center. We're providing grant funding to Riverside Excite, because they support the small business community and help them get back on their feet or get started and develop new businesses. So we do those kinds of things to help out. We're also getting ARPA funding. That's the American Rescue Plan Act money. And we're going to be putting out a second grant to the business community. This is for micro enterprise businesses who have struggled, survived, and now they're, for example, in debt. They need to get back on their feet, or they need to make changes to their business in order to continue going forward. So we're looking to provide that as well. And I didn't have time to put together as much data as I like, but the challenges that we're facing in a post-COVID world, they're not even like that. I worked through the Great Recession. I've been with the city for 21 years. So I worked in economic development through the Great Recession. The Great Recession was more difficult in some ways, but it was very different. Some things we never expected are kind of becoming the outcomes. Challenges like labor shortages. At the same time that unemployment is still high. It's difficult. There are a lot of factors involved in what creates unemployment. it's not as straightforward as you might think. There are still health concerns, people afraid to go back to work, or other reasons. So then there are supply shortages. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of what's going on in the ports right now. There can't get products in, there are shortages of supplies. The demand for supplies and the shortage is creating price increases. Inflation, pre-COVID inflation was 2.8%, and that was on the high end for the year. Most of 2019, that was for November, most of 19 was closer to 1%. That's pretty good. This is going to give you an idea how old I am, but in the 1990s, when I was just getting out of college and I had my first child, my second child, yeah, he came second, inflation was much higher. And buying a house was incredibly difficult. Even paying rent was hard. Well, look at over here in 2021. Inflation is at 6.8% and going up. That's a challenge. We're gonna beat it, but that's a challenge. These are the kind of things we have to look at, analyze, and understand. And in closing, before I hand it over to Nathan, we don't have all the answers yet. We have some research and some data, but it's so unprecedented it's hard to say where we're going to land. The City of Riverside just launched today a request for proposal looking for a consultant to come in and do a deep dive analysis of our economy, looking at it from a regional perspective as well as a local perspective. And we're asking for a leakage analysis. What's leaving the city, the dollars that we could be keeping locally? What businesses are not there? We're asking for an industry gap analysis because we know that industry diversity is resiliency and strength. And I'll give you one quick example. Love Anaheim. What happened to Anaheim during COVID? What is the one company that really covers a lot of, when you think of Anaheim, right, the happiest place on earth? A very significant percentage of the businesses relied on that same industry through Disneyland. And so you've got restaurants shutting down. None of them ended up being what you call the essential businesses during COVID. You had retailers and you had Disneyland that literally shut down. That's a big chunk of Anaheim's incoming sales tax. That's huge. And it's a big loss. And even if it's temporary, it's a big loss of jobs. So resiliency comes through diversification in your business community. And that's another thing that we're asking for a report on in Riverside is what is our mix? And resilience or diversity is important when you're hiring, when you're trying to retain talent. We have people coming out of our colleges and universities with a plethora of skills. We need diversity in order to keep them here and give them a good reason to raise their families here and grow here. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. This is going to take quite a while to find the right person to do this in-depth analysis. And we're very hopeful that it'll give us a place to go from there. It'll give us a baseline. Where are we post-COVID? What does it look like? And what do we need to do next? And it will shape the priorities for economic development for years to come. And now that I'm done talking about all the, you guys get to talk all the fun stuff, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right, thanks, Sherry. Sherry is right, I get to do the fun part myself. Everything Sherry just described to you, I now have the pleasure of showing you how it works in the real world. And we're going to talk about downtown Riverside as a kind of the test bed for economic development. But I want to piggyback on something Sherry said, that when the pandemic hit, folks like Sherry and I had to pivot completely, literally 360 degrees from what we were doing. I was about a week and a half away from bringing before our city council the biggest economic investment the city had ever seen, $350 million. And COVID, within a matter of, I'd say even hours, just brought everything to a screeching halt. And thank goodness that project now, almost 2 years later, is finally coming back. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But it's kind of unnerving when you're trying to attract all of these companies to the city, and then all of a sudden you have to pivot, and now it's not just attraction, it's survival. And that on any given day, you're talking to 50 or 60 businesses who are, they're literally, their livelihoods are on the line. So it was a crazy time. I'd like to say that, you know, we helped our business community. You know, the old adage, you know, when government comes to help, you know, ask questions. We actually did help, and we didn't try to get in the way of business. We tried to help business and come alongside them through literally the most insane times. And we heard the craziest stories over the last year and a half. So it was definitely a challenging time, but I want to talk about something fun. Okay, so how many of you have ever been to downtown Riverside? I didn't see a lot of Riversiders here, but for those of you who've been to downtown, it wasn't always kind of as cool as it is now. There didn't used to be, 10 years ago, a food lab and a game lab and all this kind of fun stuff down there. I'm going to show you what downtown used to look like. So when I was asked about 10 years ago to focus all of my efforts on downtown, I walked around downtown at 5:45, a little later than that, on a Friday evening when you expect to see a lot of activity, and this is what I found. So Dr. Bramley here will give $5 to the person who identifies what you don't see here. Anybody? There's nobody, right? This is Friday evening, and our mayor at the time very famously said that downtown was so dead on the weekends that the Main Street Mall there, you could roll a bowling ball, several of them down Main Street, you wouldn't have to worry about hitting anybody because there was nobody. This was like government downtown at 5 o'clock when City Hall closed, when the county building shut down. It was like a mass exodus, and there was just a lot of homeless people there then. And so I just walked around, and I want to give you guys some context. This is, again, Friday evening, no people, some old buildings. You guys ever been to the Fox Theater? Pretty cool. Well, it wasn't always that way.
No.
So there were years that it was shut down, and it would open like once a year for a cartoon festival, and that was it. And thankfully, the city was able to acquire it. We fixed it up. Some people don't know that this location was where they premiered Gone with the Wind back in the 1930s. Very big at the time. Thousands of people came to downtown Riverside to watch that. But the Fox Theater sat empty. It didn't look anything like it does now. If you walk in, you see all the nice murals and everything. Somebody, the previous owner, was kind enough to paint over it with about 10 layers of pink paint. And we had to strip all that away. So what you see now was almost 3 years in the making project, definitely a labor of love. But now it's like one of the most beloved attractions in downtown, and people come from all over the place to see shows there. And we had graffiti everywhere. This is an actual picture of downtown Riverside. Somebody was kind enough to tag, "Sorry about your wall." It was one of those surreal moments where, like, I can't believe somebody did that. But this kind of epitomized downtown Riverside forever. So from like the 60s up until the early 2000s, this is what downtown was like. There was no restaurants. The restaurants that were there, like Simple Simon's as an example, they didn't open in the evening. They were just open for lunch. So you had breakfast and lunch to kind of take care of the city and county workers, but that was it. So at that time, we asked UCR to quiz their students. What do you guys do on the weekend, and how much money do you have to spend? And it was amazing what came back. They were able to quantify the spending capacity of students just from UCR, didn't include Cal Baptist or La Sierra, was over $1 billion. So on any given weekend, $1 billion worth of economic opportunity was being lost to LA, Orange County. And part of the question was not only how much money do you have and where do you spend it, but what would keep you here in Riverside? And the answer was, well, if there was something to do here, of course I'd want to stay. I mean, who wants to drive out to LA and Orange County if they can, you know, if there's something closer to home? And so we said, okay, eureka moment. There's $1 billion just sitting on the table, just from UCR alone. They want to spend it here, but there's nothing for them to do here. So we actually hired a company, and it was kind of you'll see this, it's kind of a no-brainer. But this company out of LA, they're called Jones Lang LaSalle. We brought them in, they really looked at our downtown and gave us a honest impression of downtown. And they said, okay, there's a few things you need here. Number one, you need more retail, you need more restaurants, you need more bars downtown. Okay, that's gonna bring people here. But you also need people living in downtown. Okay, we've always had people living on the peripheral of downtown, but we've never actually had anybody living on Main Street. That's changed, but at the time, nobody was living there. And you want that kind of, you don't want people living there because you want like the 24/7 support for your businesses. And they said, you need to, as Sherry said, make your development process easy instead of difficult. Sherry's not wrong. You literally had to jog from building to building to get your plans approved. And it put a lot of people off. So these seemed very simple, but at the time it was like, wow, I can't believe this. You know, something so simple. But this whole document, the city, the county, the Chamber of Commerce, UCR, RCC, I mean, everybody kind of rallied around this. And I'm happy to say that within 10 years, we have facilitated, just based on this simple document, well over $1 billion worth of private investment in downtown. I'm talking government investment. It's people like Jerry taking his hard-earned money and saying, I'm going to invest it in downtown because I see the potential. So, Sherry and I have a chance to speak to students all the time. And one of the biggest things that comes up is housing, the lack thereof, and the affordability of the housing that we have here. This is a primary concern of students, whether we come speak at Cal Baptist or at UCR or La Sierra, it's the same thing. Hey Sherry, it's great. I would love to stay here after I graduate, but it's so expensive. You know, what is the city actively doing to help in that regard? And I will tell you that our friends in Sacramento don't make it easy for us. There's a lot of environmental issues, which I support, but we have to find a middle ground that prevent people from building more housing. So if you're an economics major, that the housing shortage is very simple, supply and demand. Okay, so the demand here in Riverside is insane, and it is incredibly difficult to build new housing here. So that recipe is what we have today. So if you're looking to buy a house or you have friends and family, the median home price here in Riverside, and I've never seen it like this, is almost $600,000. So historically, before COVID, Sherry and I would go out into Orange County in LA and we talked to businesses there about the merits of relocating to Riverside because it was so much cheaper than LA and Orange County. We can't make that claim anymore. We're not that far off from portions of Orange County anymore. So one of the questions that businesses always ask when they're coming here is, where are my employees going to live? And I will tell you that when you tell them the median home price is $600,000, that doesn't help. So we are doing to the best of our ability within the guidelines that we've been given by the state. We're trying to procure more housing, and we're trying to do it in places that you guys would want to live in. So you can see on there, the first one is the Merrill Brownstones. Who's ever been to the Riverside Plaza? A few of you. Have you guys noticed that there's a building going on behind it? That is going to be kind of a New York brownstone style apartment complex that we've been working on for a while. It's going to be open in the next 6 months. It's a really cool place. They have about 140 units, all for rent. I'm not sure what the prices are going to be, but it's a really cool project. If you've ever been to like Brooklyn, as an example, where you walk up, you have the staircase goes up to the upper floor, down the staircase down. It's just a really cool place for people to hang out. We are recreating that environment here in Riverside. The other one, the Mark, which is a downtown development. It's about 165 apartment units with about 25,000 square feet of ground floor commercial. Those 100, this isn't done yet. This is going to be done. It has received well over 2,500 applications to rent in there already. So pretty crazy, and just a testament to, you know, again, think about what downtown used to be, and now people are literally climbing over each other trying to get into downtown. And then right, I would say down the street is a project that just opened. It's called Centerpoint. It's 125 apartments. Within the first weekend they opened, they already leased out the first 3 floors. They have applications for the rest of it. But all these apartments, I hate to say, are a victim of the market. They're very expensive. Some of the units that will be in the mark will probably go for over $4,000 a month. Doesn't sound very appealing to me. But, you know, we see it.
Yeah,
Guys are big. People are paying it. So we are ultra sensitive to affordable housing and making sure that if you guys graduate from Cal Baptist and you decide you want to stay in Riverside and you want to live in downtown, that there's a place for you. So we are actively working with affordable housing developers to procure more affordable options in downtown, not just in downtown, but across the city. You can see a few projects that we're working on. One of the big ones is the Mission Heritage Project. That's 72 units, all 100% completely affordable. So there is no market rate apartments in there. We want to make sure that everybody who lives or who wants to live in downtown has the ability to kind of grab a piece of it. So one of the things I'm really excited about, we just got approval from our city council to work with a developer who's going to be building a student housing development in downtown. One of our requirements were that 25% of all of the units within there, which probably there's going to be 140 units, so whatever 25% of that, it's all going to be affordable. And it's only for students, and it's down in the right-hand corner. So if you've been to our beautiful new downtown library, this is going to be built on the parking lot right behind it. And this is going to be exclusively student housing, but student housing for UCR, Cal Baptist, RCC, La Sierra University. We love students, and we want you guys in downtown shopping at our retailers, going to the food lab, so on and so forth. So we want an area where you guys can come live, hang out, do life, do all that cool stuff. I'll show you some imagery of it. Oops, sorry. So you can see it's going to be really nice. It's going to have commercial on the ground floor, beautiful pool up on the second deck. This would be your elevation from University Avenue. And this is, if you were standing under, I guess you'd call it the arch of the new downtown library and looking straight ahead, that's what you would see. So we're really excited about that project. So when I talked about the need to bring new restaurants and retailers downtown, we have been working especially hard to do that. It helps when you have good folks like Jerry here to work with. Jerry owns the food lab and the game lab, which he's going to talk about a little later. But if you've ever been to Slater's 50/50, they just opened in downtown Riverside. I will tell you their claim to fame is their enormous burgers that are like 50% bacon and 50% beef. They're not very healthy, but you're young, you guys can do it. So I would encourage you to go down and check them out. But if you've never been to the food lab, it's 14 independent eateries in one location. It's an urban food court. And one of the things when I first met Jerry years ago now that I really appreciated, we went before city council, we got the deal done, they're operating in a city building. And when the press caught wind of it, I would say some pretty well-known restaurants hit me up and said, hey, I want to be part of that. And I told Jerry, and Jerry's response was famous. Look, we think there's a place for chains in downtown, just not in the food lab. We're all about food entrepreneurs here. We want the mom and pops, we want the startups, and if you go to the food lab, that's who it is. These guys are all food entrepreneurs. This is first and second locations, and almost all of them have a unique tie back to the City of Riverside and the Inland Empire. So that right there, I was like, oh, Jerry, give me props, that's awesome. Yeah, yes, there's a place for chains, like Chipotle. I like Chipotle. I've been looking for a place in downtown, but they're not right for the food lab. The food lab is that one-off eating experience that you can't get anywhere else. And then just to give you guys a sneak peek of some things that are upcoming, not just in downtown, throughout the city. Stone Church Brewing is coming to downtown. They're pretty famous in Corona and Temecula, and they don't just do beer. Don't let the brewery mistake what they represent. They just hired a chef, and I'm trying to remember his name, but he's pretty famous down in the Temecula area. and their food offering is going to be amazing there. Cannot wait for them to open. One that I'm really excited about, if you've ever been to Arcade Coffee over off of University, they are opening a new location, thankfully right outside of City Hall in downtown. But they're kind of blowing up, if you will. So they're not just going to be coffee anymore. They've hired a chef. They're going to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. They're also going to have a full bar. We're expecting really good things from them. Every table is a company out of LA. And I had a chance to meet the owner, and I was really impressed by her. One of her kind of issues she had living in LA was that good food was really expensive. Good, like not homemade food, but just wholesome food was really expensive. But where she lived, McDonald's was really cheap. So she had this idea, I'm going to create a restaurant where people can come in and get good, wholesome food for the same price it would cost you to buy like a 6-pack of chicken McNuggets. And they're all over LA, and I'm proud to say that their first Inland Empire location is here in Riverside. And they chose Riverside because they understand that the people who are living in downtown, the people of Riverside, they really appreciate what every table can bring. So they're going to actually be opening up, hopefully early next year, right next to Slater's 50 in downtown. And just a couple of other things. If you're a vegetarian, which I'm not, but I appreciate vegetarian food, the Roots is hopefully going to be opening before Festival of Lights at the end of the year. And they're going to be a 100% vegan fine dining. And that sounded pretty crazy to me at first, but when I actually got to try some of the food, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Thank goodness you guys are coming, because there's a real niche for that. So we're happy to have them. And I mentioned Slater's 50/50. There's another one called Hot's coming. Those are just a few of what's coming to Riverside. And certainly the list of what's coming is much longer than this. I only have a few minutes. I wanted to kind of keep it high level for you. But one of the things that we've really struggled with historically, not just in downtown, but across the city, is office space. Okay? Maybe 2 years ago, big company out of Orange County, they actually called our mayor first at the time, Rusty Bailey, and he said, look, we've got this huge company, hundreds of jobs, we've identified Riverside, we're coming, where can we move into? And they needed like, I don't know, maybe 100,000 square feet of office space. And I was like, wow, that really sucks. It would be great to have them here, but there's no place for them to go. We don't have 100,000 square feet of office anywhere. And sadly, that company went to Rancho Cucamonga, which not sadly, it's still in the Inland Empire. I'm assuming that people from Riverside are working there, so there's some connection. But we really need to work with our development community to build more office space in downtown. As Sherry said, we don't want you to leave after you graduate from college. We want you to stay here. In order to keep you here, we have to have those dynamic companies here. In order to get the dynamic companies, we need to have places for them to go. So we have been working tirelessly with our development community to build more, not just office downtown or throughout the city, but Class A office. So Class A is, the difference between like Class A and Class B, I'll just make it quick, is when you walk in to a building and it's all marble, and they got fountains and stuff inside, that's Class A. Okay, we need more of that downtown. And that is like, if you think about like where tech companies and startups, what they want to graduate to, it's these type of buildings. So Citrus Tower, which is actually right off the freeway, you've probably driven past it, right off the 91 in downtown. Brand new Class A office building, completely leased. We're so excited to have them in downtown. The Riverside Alive project, or that project I was telling you about that came to a screeching halt with COVID. The Riverside Alive project, which includes a 100,000 square foot expansion of our convention center, all kinds of new housing and retail, also includes a 220,000 square foot Class A office building, much needed. And then also, not just in downtown, but throughout the city, we have a lot of older buildings. So we're working with owners to try to get them to clean it up and to do some rehab work. And in some cases, we're even offering them grants to do it. So office is a very important part of what we're doing. And then, you know, during Festival of Lights, which I hope you guys get to experience at some point in a post-COVID world, We have hundreds of thousands of visitors to come to Riverside. We also have a convention center that drives visitor traffic to our city. And if you've ever been to downtown, we only have a couple of hotels. We got the Mission Inn, we got the Marriott, we have the Hampton. But we want to make sure that when we're expanding our convention center, we also have places for people to sleep when they come here. So we're working with developers closely to build more hotels, not just in downtown, but throughout the city. So going to City Council tomorrow afternoon is the hopeful approval of the AC Marriott and the Residence Inn. This is right next to the historic church in downtown that's got everybody all up in arms. It's been in the newspaper, you might have seen it. But the interesting thing, and I'll just be brief, the AC is Marriott's highest end boutique hotel brand, 5-star. And 10 years ago, when we were starting to redevelop downtown, we would have taken a Holiday Inn. I mean, we were desperate. We needed more hotels downtown. We've come full circle, so when developers and hotel chains come to Riverside now, it's either bring us your best or go away. And with this site, it was really interesting. Both Hilton and Marriott wanted it. And our response was, okay, Marriott, what are you offering? Hilton, what are you offering? And Hilton offered what would be the equivalent of like a 4-star hotel. Very nice. You know, again, 10 years ago, we would have gone, crazy, so bad, we're going to bring you our AC. Like, whoa, that's insane. And not even a year earlier, it was pretty funny. We were at a meeting with one of the reps for Marriott, and she told me, you will never get an AC. Never. And I saw her a year later, I'm like, hey, what's up? We got it. And we're at a point now, it's like, bring us your best or go away, because this is a new day for Riverside. Our expectations are up here, whereas they used to be like way down here. So I'm gonna go back to jobs. We want to keep you guys here. I hope that like is a constant theme of this. You guys are important to us. You're the future workforce for Riverside, and we want to keep you here. So I would say about 3 years ago, a collaboration between the city, the county, the chamber, we worked collectively to get the California Air Resources Board to relocate to Riverside. And you may not have heard of it, that's okay, but I'm hoping one day you guys are going to be an employee there. So when they came over here, they brought with them 500 jobs that on average pay north of $150,000. They're very technical jobs that require the kind of education that you're getting here at Cal Baptist. And they also identified that a good portion of their workforce was at or close to retirement age. And they chose Riverside because of Cal Baptist. They chose it because of UCR, La Sierra University, because of the talent pipeline. You guys that would be graduating and taking those jobs. Very technical. If you remember just a couple of years ago, Volkswagen got busted for lying basically to the state about their emissions. It was CARB that caught them. So their new facility is 2 weeks away from its grand opening. And I'm hopeful that the kind of jobs that are produced there are enough to keep you guys here, get you off the freeway, save you a 2-hour commute on a Friday afternoon. And so we're super excited to have CARB come. I'll just run through this really quick. I'll let you talk to Jerry, but these are the kind of things that are going on right now. So lastly from me, you know, I think we all acknowledge that COVID sucked. I mean, it was horrible. But one of the, I would say, a few bright spots that came out of it, it really changed the way that we in government think and how we do business. And I'll be very brief, but before the pandemic, I can honestly tell you that I had never, ever used Zoom, GoToMeeting, or Teams. Had never used it. And again, for us, one really good thing coming out of the pandemic is that we're much more savvy now. And whereas before, I was literally running all over City Hall from one meeting to the next, I could just do it in the comfort of my office. And I don't have to run all over the place. And one other thing that's really, I would say from the city's perspective, it's opened, you know, we're all about a diverse workforce. And how do you procure a diverse workforce when you're only kind of hiring from the local area. I will tell you that we didn't, before the pandemic, if you were in North Carolina and you wanted a job here in Riverside, we were making your blood fly over here for that interview. Now we're doing interviews over Teams. I can tell you that we're doing more nationwide recruitment now. Again, the talent pool for us has exploded. We're not just focused here in the local area, but we now have the ability to interview people, not that we didn't before, we just chose not to use it. And I would say this, one other positive thing that's come out of this is it has refocused our desire and our intent. I'm not sure why we weren't doing it before, to be more community focused. For everything we're doing to be viewed through the lens of the community rather than just a bunch of government people like myself. So we're getting the community involved in, I would say, almost every aspect of every decision we make. And that was something that definitely wasn't happening before the pandemic. So enough from me. I'd like to introduce my good friend Jerry Tessier. If you've been to the food lab, this guy, he made it happen. If you've been to the game lab, this is his brainchild. He is a good friend, a great business owner. His family has a long history in Pomona. I think you said your mom's from Riverside, that's the connection. And we are thrilled to have him here in Riverside. And I think he's really going to give you some great insight on how the pandemic affected not only his business, but the businesses that make up his tenant base. And some great advice on, if you're an aspiring business, if you know somebody who's a business, some good tips for kind of going from not just surviving, but to thriving. So with that, Jerry, thank you.
Let me just sit, actually. Good evening, everyone. So I have to be inspirational. My name is Jerry Tessier, the President of Arteco Partners. We're a Pomona-based company. It's a family company. And these are some of the projects we've done. Has anyone been to the Fox Theater in Pomona, seen a concert there? Sweet. Food lab? Game lab? Well, that's pretty good. So, we just do interesting, innovative projects. Often it involves historic renovation and repurposing old buildings. And we focus on, downtown environments. So downtown Pomona, downtown Claremont, downtown Ontario, Temecula. And Riverside, we had been poking around for years. And my mom was originally transplanted to Riverside. And we saw exactly what Nathan saw, no one walking down the street, but recognized that there were some great bones. And it wasn't just bones in terms of buildings, it was bones in terms of the different potential customer base that your business could have. So, Riverside downtown has this neat confluence of a daytime civic and office core, so you have daytime customers. It has evening destination customers, especially now because of tourism destinations like the Convention Center, Mission Inn, the late night nightclub scene. And it also has a local residential base that really gravitates towards downtown in terms of doing civic business or going out. So for us, it was like the three components of a business model that really needs to have a very broad target market in order to thrive, and that's a food hall. So we weren't looking in Riverside specifically for a food hall, but it turned out our project in Redlands had stalled, and through a mutual restaurateur friend, we got invited and to meet with the city manager. And fast forward 5 years or 4 years, and then the food hall opened up. And like Nathan said, it's a collection of 14 independent eateries, so there's no chains. Most of them are chef-driven and chef-owned, menu-driven, scratch cuisine, and it's supposed to be a unique entertainment kind of destination place for going out. It also helps, it's right next door to the Fox Theater, of course. So imagine, obviously you guys probably all have an idea what happened to restaurants during COVID. So imagine your revenue drops 90% in a matter of 1 week. So imagine having a business that is literally forced to close by the government through health orders for almost a year and a half. that was our Pomona Fox Theater. It has 2,000 person capacity concert hall, and you're shuttered. So obviously a variety of help and assistance, and federal and local have gotten us and many other businesses through this. But talk about a shock to your business model, and you hear the word pivot about 50 times a day in what you're told to do and what you read about what you're supposed to do. But in fact, pivot is what you had to do. What was kind of interesting is that, I was witness to we have 14 businesses in the food lab. So we're the developer, we built it, we're essentially the landlord to 14 different tenants. But what's unique is we also operate the space, operate the common area. So we're very much knowledgeable about their business operations and their cost structures and their customer counts. We know what food menus, we know what they sell, we know how much they're selling it for, and there's a variety of different businesses that are there. And it's interesting how different businesses reacted to the COVID shock. I mean, some closed instantly, out of fear and panic and not knowing what to do. Some couldn't find the labor, some were just run by family members, and family members got sick and were forced to close. Some chose to close because they wanted to protect the health of their customers. It was a wild time. Some stayed open and just, I know I'm not closing, and people are, not only my business, but my employees are depending upon it. And of course, they had, for a point, had to pivot to an entirely online and delivery model. So it was a fact, I wouldn't say it's fascinating, it was all terrifying, frankly, to go through the COVID process as a business owner and as a real estate developer. But it was really fascinating to see how different businesses reacted. Everyone had to change how they're doing business. So obviously, I don't know if anyone wants to be a restaurateur here, but I think lessons apply, across the business spectrum. Is identify what you can do and go after it. And so transitioning more to online sales and delivery sales was the big pivot. And even a place like the Game Lab, which is a very large virtual reality and retro gaming arcade without food service, we said, well, we have a very large space in the back, so let's build out a kitchen and try a ghost kitchen or a cloud kitchen. So I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's basically, you can do online ordering, and it's from a kitchen or a restaurant that doesn't necessarily have a storefront. So that's what this hat is. Collab Kitchens is within I don't know 90 days or so, we built out the kitchen space in the back of the Game Lab just so we could have some semblance of staying open. Because once you close and outright close and are forced to let go staff, it's really hard to reopen, right? So even just keeping a little bit of the business open and operating made it easier to reopen. And if you probably all remember, you can reopen and not reopen, and then we step forward and one step back, and then there was orange and red and blue, and then there was 1, 2, but it was a wild ride, and so you really didn't know what to do. But it was for tenants that actually, for our business operators that closed, rebooting was extremely hard. For people that stayed open, and even on a very, very limited scale, they were able to react, a little bit more quickly, and also react better and benefit more to the stimulus funds that came through. You wanna? There. Reassessing, reconfiguring the business model, take your services online. That was it's basically kind of all of the same approach to how a lot of our businesses pivoted and adjusted. I think there's some definitely long-term implications that we're realizing. The re-emphasis on staff's health and safety, and I don't just mean, hey, you got to wear face masks and you're being tested or vaccinated or not vaccinated or however you do that, but it's really a re-emphasis on the health of your labor force and just the mental health of your labor force, the retention of your labor force, making sure that they feel engaged and active in your business, and Right now, there's a labor shortage. Right now, labor costs are going higher. So paying more attention to your labor force and their compensation and their benefits and flexibility with work schedules and everything else that goes into having kind of healthy and happy labor force is all the more important right now. It used to be, in the restaurant industry, even 6 months ago, mostly cost of food, well, it depends on what model you're in, but the cost of food, the cost of goods was your highest expense. And right now, labor is. So labor's replaced cost of goods. And that's even with, everyone has been to the market lately and restaurants, and costs are going up. So even as food costs and everything else goes up, labor is still outpacing that. And this is from the perspective of the small local restaurant entrepreneur. That may not hold true for a large chain restaurant or for Costco. So again, it just goes back towards how important your labor force is and how much it costs for you to retrain and hire and retain labor. So I think that's one of the #1 lessons coming out of COVID for us. The long-term price and inflation challenges. Right now, everyone's worried about food costs and input costs, and it's really causing people to again pivot and change certain aspects of their business model. So using restaurants and the menu as your analogy there, people are looking into, like my tenants are looking at reducing the number of items on the menu from 30 down to 20, right? So you can limit the number of food you're buying, you can be more efficient, you can have less wastage, less food loss, and so you just constantly have to make adjustments in your not in your core business model, but how you execute it in order to react to some of these things. And it's happening at a pace now that most people haven't seen ever in their business career. Reconnecting and re-engaging with your customers. So, what we found in COVID is I think people want to help their community, want to help their local businesses, feel more of an affinity towards local independent-owned businesses than they do towards chain restaurants or corporate restaurants. Everyone was forced to buy a whole lot of things online and from Amazon, right? Especially when you were locked down. So now you're trying to, pull back from that, kind of correct that, and re-engage with your local businesses. But the more we found that our tenants are most successful, the more those tenants that make the most effort at engagement, authentic engagement with their customers, see the best returns and see the best sales. And mostly, almost entirely, I would say mostly it's done via social media engagement also, but there's many other ways that they've done that. I think we're fairly well positioned post-COVID because we're not a food court in a mall, we're not chains, so just the inherent nature of what we do kind of lends itself to that. And it's also why, frankly, it's why we're called the Riverside Food Lab. And it's also why our next food hall that we're doing in Redlands, the one that we were supposed to do before Riverside but got flipped, that we're not taking that brand. We've been asked a lot, like, because the Food Lab has a good brand, so you're going to call your next food hall a food lab. Maybe call it the Redlands Food Lab, and we go do the Claremont Food Lab. So intentionally, we're not doing that. It's going to be the Redlands Public Market, or it's going to be in Claremont something else, because we want the community to feel like it's their space, right? And to feel like it's unique and it's authentic. So I think part of our business model is trying to create a business model, try to streamline the business model of these food halls and build out several of them over the next couple of years. Streamline the business, but not streamline the brand and not have the same businesses in there. So it feels local and authentic in each location, but we're going to get the efficiencies of operations in terms of as an overall food hall operations, because we're going to have multiple food halls and we're going to be able to figure out how to operate them really efficient. So I think that's a lesson that can be applied to anything that you may do or any industry you may do in terms of learning how to operate ultra efficient and be able to replicate it, but do it in a way that's unique and authentic to the community that you're operating in. Creating unique, so tying into the last point is the unique shopping experience. So, you probably heard about the experience, the experience economy. Everything needs to be an experience now. So, and the entertainment experience. So, I think that's another thing that we realized in COVID, and that ties in with the engagement piece, is how to make people feel that they're doing something other than just shopping when they're going to your retail store. How do you make people that they feel like they're doing something other than just eating when you're going to the restaurant? So again, that's part of our model, is to create kind of a communal food experience and to have events and activities that make it be more than just a destination to eat. So I don't know, I think that's all I have on, we're actually doing pretty well post-COVID. Our sales have rebounded in the food lab, are actually more than pre-COVID. Same thing is happening at the game lab. So I think people are craving to, after being locked up for so long and so much uncertainty, I think people are craving, I think that's evidence that people are craving so much more to be in those social settings and do so responsibly, be in settings where you can actually interact and re-engage with and have a sense of community. So.
All right, thanks, Sherry. So, Sherry mentioned that we're going to do a pop quiz. I hope you guys are paying attention. Jerry did bring some Food Lab swag that we would love to give away. So, some of the questions that we're going to ask, some of them I think we covered. And we would love to give these away to you guys. So, very quickly, what year was the City of Riverside founded?
1870.
1870, all right, she gets a bag. All right, come on,
I
get
knew
your
that
bag.
Not the top one.
Not the top one right here. All right. Here you go. All right, second question.